Popcorn rice after discussion.
Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
Hey everybody, this is Derek, also known as Paperweight Entertainment. I'm here for Nerd Initiative with a real treat. I am joined tonight by the incredible creative duo of I Am Iron Man, Mr. Mariwa Ayadele and Dotan Akande. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me to discuss this incredible new series that you're working on, and also some of the things from your past and where your love of comics came from. So we'll jump right into it. Mariwa, I want to start with you. What is your nerd origin story? You know, where did your love for superheroes and comics come from?
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for having us. When it comes to comic books, I grew up in a small town called Oshogbo in Nigeria. So we had like little to no exposure to comic books, cartoons, and so many things. Like so many of TV shows and everything we've watched have been like on all those free to air things. So it was really difficult growing up as a kid where there weren't access to cartoons or all those stuff. But eventually, my dad got a little more comfortable, so was able to afford cable TV. So we started watching cartoons, and then on Cartoon Network, you would have occasional appearances of superheroes, and especially characters like Samurai Jack too came in, which was a very big influence to my love of animation and comic books. So it started from TV before it grew to the books.
Yeah, that happens a lot. It seems like, especially here in the States, because we were so used to the Marvel comic book TV shows. Myself, that's where I got into my love of Iron Man and comics as well. So, Dotan, what about you? Where did you get your love of superheroes and comics?
Yeah, funny things, kind of like the same story. Yeah, I think it must have been X-Men, and then Samurai Jack, then Dexter. Then years later, we found out that some of these other things that I really liked were created by Gendy Tartakovsky. Mm-hmm. So everything was just, linking together, and I really fell in love with this man and his work. So yeah, but mostly Samurai Jack, because it did something to me, It was very, what's the word now? Is it transcending, I should say? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like this is a real world, even though they don't look like us. They have these angular drawings and everything, mm-hmm. but it always felt real. The action, set pieces, everything was just fantastic. So yeah, I became hooked immediately. And years later, I met Mariwa, and he was saying the same thing. Samurai Jack, Gendy Tartakovsky. I'm like, what? Nice. That's cool. So yeah. So cartoons generally.
Yeah. And Samurai Jack is fantastic.
Yeah, we like cartoons a lot, but I think it was Gendy Tartakovsky that made us notice that sometimes as a kid you love all cartoons basically. If cartoons come up on the TV, you're going to watch it, no matter how good or bad they are. But it's when we watch things like Samurai Jack, Clone Wars, and things done by Gendy that are like, okay, I have a favorite show. I have one I don't want to miss. So it really changed our taste in entertainment.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that. Gendy Tartakovsky's art style is kind of unlike anything in animation. I feel like I especially loved his Clone Wars series. I thought that was a phenomenal show. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. So moving on, Dotan, you kind of mentioned about how when you and Mariwa got to know each other and realized that you had similar interests and similar backgrounds. Why don't you take us into that? Kind of how did you guys get involved in collaborating?
So I always share this very funny story about Mariwa. We were still very quiet and trying to understand the terrain and people and the power dynamic and everything. But here comes Mariwa one day late to class, and there was this very strict lecturer who didn't allow late comers come into class. And this guy just jumps into class on his knees or something, begging and crying. And I was like, who is this dramatic fellow who did not care about, this newness we're all facing? It was entertaining, it was funny, it was real. And I felt like, okay, this is a very real, authentic person. I would like to be his friend. So that's how I met Marwa. But we did not get to work together until I think our fourth year in school. No, I think third year. Should be our third year, right?
Third year. Yeah, third year.
Yeah, third year. So then he was already like the best and favorite computer programmer we had in our set. I think even in school, fantastic guy and everything. And I was designing the UI UX for the things he was writing for. So he was the backend developer, and logos too, So we got to do a lot of things. He came up with different ideas for things like tournaments in school. I would handle the logo designs and the banner designs. I was just handling designs, and he was handling, backend designs and backend programming and logistics of those tournaments. So I realized he had this very tactician type of brain, and from there I felt if this programming prowess he has can be brought into stories. I thought about it one time, and I just felt it to be so fantastic. I wasn't surprised, I should say, when he said that he's been writing prose, right? Prose, yeah.
Yeah, prose, yeah. Started in prose.
And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, of course. You're really good at programming. And I think a good programmer should be a good storyteller, So, yeah. So we started with building software programs and working together with designs for I think school. We did some things for the school. Then I can't remember when we started telling stories together. That must be after school, I guess.
Yeah, that was after school. In Nigeria, when you're done with your tertiary education, you are forced to you have to have 1 year of service to the government. It's a little bit of paramilitary, but not totally. So during that year of service, Dotun and I were posted far the opposite ends of the country. So we mostly communicated on the phone. We hardly saw each other after then. So at that point, I wanted to start telling these stories. I think stories about superheroes. I was going online because I really wanted to tell superhero stories. That was the time I was falling deeply in love with comic book movies, comic books generally, everything. But because I didn't have access to many of those books, I was always going through the internet, any YouTube video on what's coming out now, any article on the new status quo of these characters. So I was following the comic books, but not by reading them or by reading what people were saying about them. So I really wanted to write my own stories too. And I started Googling, okay, what are open domain superhero characters that I could write? And I think I saw one called the Red Bee. So I was like, okay, I want to write a story about the Red Bee. But before I knew that, I removed the red and just went with B. And I wanted to work with Dotun, and it's like, okay, I'll write the prose or something. Just give me covers, give me images that I can put in between this prose. So I just wanted, but Dotun was also extremely busy then because you also work for the government during that time. So Dotun was a secondary school teacher then, so he was always very busy. He didn't have a place to himself there, so was staying with a lot of people. So it was very, very difficult for us to work together, even though we were coming from the university where we were always staying in each other's room, having sleepovers and work. But after the service, then we've not stopped ever since. We've just been working together, prose, comics, motion comics, animation, and then everything basically.
Yeah, So I want to kind of leading into that. I wanted to talk about New Men for a little bit, if we could. I got a chance to read the first 3 issues of New Men, and not just because you guys are on here. It really is excellent work. It's a great story.
Oh, thank you.
So I read, I believe it was the backup of the first issue, the letter from you, Mariwa, about how you didn't want to write superheroes to begin with. You felt like, am I getting that right? That you felt like you didn't, for a long time, you didn't want to do anything with superheroes, and then once you finally did, that's when New Men came about.
Yeah, when I was, I loved superheroes. I love superhero stories. But when I got into the industry proper, like when I wanted to work, we left prose. I wanted to work on actual comic books, and Dotto and I started a company called Collectible Comics. The entire market at that time was saturated with superheroes. There were endless debates on this character would be this character, constant comparison of, oh, this African character is way better than this Western character. And at that point, so I just wanted to walk away from all that. It was just too much. And Dotto and I loved a lot of stories like cyberpunk, stories in the cyberpunk genre, especially sci-fi, fantasy. So we wanted to tell these stories. We didn't want our company to be just like every other company. Every other new comic book company that was starting up in Nigeria, and there were lots of them then, were all superhero based. We wanted to stand out. So we saw ourselves like, oh, telling these elevated stories, and we did that for a while. We told all those stories, but the same reason why we walked away from superpowers was the same reason why we went back into it, because the arguments and the debates got so much. We're like, okay, we felt like Thanos at the end of the Avengers. We were like, fine, I'll do it myself, that kind of thing. So that's basically how we're like, okay, we're going to do this superhero comics, and we're going to do it well.
Well, you did it very well. It like I said, New Men has been a blast to read. So how did that story come about? The story that you guys have told, for anybody, and maybe you could give a quick little rundown for anybody that's not familiar with the story.
Okay. New Men is, in the world of New Men, if you face death without fear, you have the powers of a god. So if you can put yourself in danger of any sort, life-threatening danger, but you are devoid of fear, you get superpowers. And the powers are usually linked to the threats you put yourself through. So let's say, for example, you run into a burning building without fear. You probably have powers to turn to ice, where fire doesn't hurt you. So that's where the world of New Men is. But now, that's how they get the superpowers. But this is Africa. This is Nigeria. If you have power, the ones with political power would want to hunt you down. That's just the way it is here. It's democratic, but sometimes it can feel authoritarian. It can feel like you're being ruled by dictators. There are things you can say online, you can't say online. So I wanted to bring that world of superheroes to our world, where you are so restricted. If you add superpowers here, the government would not allow you to survive more than a day. And that's the story I wanted to really tell. And it's more than 3 issues. We've been having issues publishing it digitally, so we have 1 to 3 online. But in the physical copies, you can get issue 4 in physical copies, and there's a trade paperback coming out next month. But the story was inspired by the state of the country, by our desire to tell superhero stories, but it was also deeply buried in the state of mind that we were in then. We'd been struggling in the comic book industry for years at that point. We weren't getting the recognition we think we deserved. I was going through a lot spiritually, Like I was a very devout Christian, but at that point I was losing faith, and there was so many things happening at that point. I could say maybe I was suicidal as well. So everything went to that story. So the story also had religious basis of resurrection, death, and rebirth, which is the basis of a lot of religion. And the story somewhat glorifies suicide because you have to put yourself under threat to get those powers. So all those things mixed together, and you could see it in the tone of the story. Even moments that are not dark are eerily quiet, and so that's where the story was coming from for you.
Yeah, for me, I remember we had this conversation about police brutality in our country. Prior to this time, like you said, we had, moved away from telling stories about superheroes. We loved superheroes. We still do. I mean, we can never stop loving superheroes, right? And so we came back and we started brainstorming. What stories do you want to tell? What stories do you want to tell? And in epic mirror fashion, he calls me one day and says, in Yoruba, that is, they've brought it, shouting on the phone, they've brought it. If our listeners understand the language, they know what he's saying. And what he means by they've brought it is like the creative spirit or something has, blessed him with a story. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. I'm all ears. What do you have? Let's hear it. And then he comes up with this idea about people facing death without fear and everything. Okay. And then we started fine tuning and, cutting off things. So what led to all this was our going away from telling superhero stories. And it forced us to really, really think about a unique entry into this genre that is so popular and loved, and it seems as if everybody has done everything possible in that genre. So yeah, and then we're thinking about the X-Men too. We're thinking about our country, and at that time, unfortunately, till now, but it was worse then. If I'm being honest, to be fair, there was a lot of police brutality. I mean, we even had this protest and SARS that was kind of global at the point in 2020, I believe. So, and we were not really happy. And that period too had been stopped several times by the police and was profiled, a young guy in a car, a young guy at the back of an Uber, and then they're checking your phone. So we're not really happy with the conditions of, and the state of the nation. And then we were thinking about a scenario where someone is beat up by the police and then he dies and he wakes up with powers and. So we're just running through different ideas and fine tuning these things, and then we're like, oh, yeah. Imagine facing death without fear, but you have to choose to die to get your powers. So that was the origin, and then Mira just went all out with its really crazy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a blast to read what I've gotten to read of it so far, and Dotan, your artwork is phenomenal throughout. There's one specific scene that I can't get out of my head, and I believe it's at the end of the first issue when the couple goes over the edge of the building, and when she looks down to see what happened to her boyfriend.
A boyfriend, yeah.
That's
backwards.
Bent backwards. Yeah. Man, I stopped for a second and I looked. Man, that's really impressive. That stuck with me. But the artwork is phenomenal in everything that I've seen you do. But New Men was a lot of fun to read. So, do you guys have plans going forward with New Men? Is that something that you're going to continue working on? Like I said, I've only gotten to read the first 3 issues because I got it digitally. So are there plans moving forward with that story? Has it taken a little bit of a backseat while you're working on some other things, or are you not allowed to say?
We're not sure. We're not sure yet. we're still having some negotiations and discussions with the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So until that is settled, we're not sure when we're going to be moving forward with it. So, but right now it's mostly our Marvel work, and I think next will be if we're going back to our independent work to touch upon it a little, to probably be My Grandfather Was a God, a webtoon series that we're also working on. And with that series, we have all the rights, so it's easier to jump on and off it. Yeah.
So you guys published that through your it's a web comic, so you did that all through your company.
It's just on webtoons,
Right.
on webtoons.
Right. I'm gonna have to. I've not gotten to read that one yet. I'm gonna have to check that out. When in one of your bio, both of your bios, you mentioned that, and I thought, oh, I hadn't even seen that yet. I've got to go read that, because I'm not gonna lie, I've done a deep dive a little bit on some of your guys' work ever since I read that first issue of I Am Iron Man, and I didn't realize that you had one of the stories at the end of Iron Man 25 of the anniversary issue, or was it, the 650th issue. And I thought, man, when I was reading I Am Iron Man, I thought, man, this artwork seems so familiar, because the style is impressive, and it does stick with you. Which, by the way, that was another fantastic story. But so moving on to, you mentioned your Marvel work. How did you guys come about working with Marvel, especially on the Avengers? It's a long title. What was it? Avengers Ultimate or Unlimited? Avengers Unlimited Infinity Comic.
Infinity Comic.
It's a long title. How did that happen for you guys to get involved in that?
I think we got involved with Marvel through the webcomic we just told you about. My Grandfather Was a God. So basically, growing up in Nigeria, you have access to lots of comic books, and the comics you get to read a lot were free comics. So we always wanted to give back to that same community, free comics. So we did a free comic, but while we're working on it, we're like, okay, why don't we just send this comic out to creators, editors, and people that we love their work? Almost like, oh yeah, we've been enjoying your work all this while. We hope you can enjoy our work too. So we sent it to Tom Brevoort. We weren't expecting anything from it. Just like, oh, I read it. It's nice. Keep up the good work. Yeah, that's what we're expecting. And then Tom Brevoort said he read the first 3 episodes, and it was like, okay, I want you guys to work with me. So that's how we started working with Tom Brevoort. So he put us on Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood, where we did a little short story there. And after that, it was like, okay, he's working on an Infinity Comic format series for Marvel Unlimited. And since we're coming from webtoons where it's the same format, do we want to tell a story there? So I was like, okay, sure, we'll do that. So it's very, I was like, can we get to tell an Iron Man story? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, good. So it was very exciting.
Yeah, it was a great story. I was going to ask you about the difference between drawing panel to panel versus the webtoon Infinity style. What way do you prefer, and which one is more challenging?
Prefer. I'm not sure which I prefer, but I'm sure which is more challenging. The Infinity Scroll, I like to tell stories with colors. You can evoke another feeling with stronger colors or less saturated colors on another scene. And, you just control your narrative like that, control the mood and everything. On Infinity Scroll, that's a bit harder to do in the style that I like to use, because I like them to bleed sometimes. I think on the Infinity, medium, I wouldn't want to use rigid panels too often. Sometimes I think since it's that long and continuous, I think you should use gradients a lot and everything. I enjoy it more that way anyway. So because I enjoy it more that way, I wanted to do that too, and I found it really challenging, and I enjoyed the challenge, and it was really interesting to work on. And So it's challenging. I don't know if I prefer it because it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time than I thought it would. And yeah, because of the things I wanted to achieve, it actually, built a different type of skill that I could use in, the more rigid panel structures we have in, the orthodox comic books.
The floppies.
Yeah. The floppies, yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I wondered if that would be the much more challenging based on just scrolling through reading those stories, and one single panel just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah. I think there was a time Dr. and I were saying that because when we were into meeting some of the deadlines, we're like, the thing is, each panel is like a full page panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes the very long was like,
that's how we like to treat it
panels.
Anyway.
Yeah, like 3 full page panels. Yeah. And it has to be a labor of love because just like a regular comic, you get paid per page, per panel kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when a panel is like super long, it's still a panel.
Yeah.
So you have to do it for the love of it.
Right.
And one thing I really, really enjoyed especially on Webtoon, I can't remember the name of the comic now, of the web comic, is when you have one long panel telling a lot, showing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do that on every episode. One long panel, just keep showing. It has this panoramic feel, and it curves and everything, and you're like, how did this person do this? There's a Spider-Man Infinity comic like that I really love. It has several of these long panels, and I'm like, I want to do this, and I'll do it well,
and that's what did. There was one where you follow the trolls from the top of the ship.
Oh yeah. Where Riri was,
you get under the ship. The thing about the Infinity comic format is that you have more tools to use.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you can build tension by having a very long panel. Like, okay, what am I trying to see? You can still show multiple panels at the same time, and sometimes just a little bit of a panel. You can slow down your readers. In most
you can
comics,
have fade outs and fade ins.
Yeah. The gutters in a page, in a floppy, is usually the same size.
Mm-hmm.
But in Infinity comic, you can make the gutters different. So if there's a scene change, you can actually have a bigger gutter so that you know that, okay, this is a new scene. There are so many tools that are available to you. You can have dialogue first before you see. In comic, it's dialogue and image together.
Mm-hmm.
But here you can actually make sure that you read the dialogue first before you see the image, or see the image first before the dialogue. So, but because there's so many more tools to use, it also makes you think more, and that can be a lot more stressful. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, what are the tools to use at the appropriate time? But if you can use them well, if you're able to use them well, it can create for a more powerful experience than floppies.
Let me buttress that point, Murray. So one of the things I researched was, okay, how many people use what particular phone, and what is the screen size of that phone? So I had this template of different screen sizes while I was working on that, because we wanted to control, fade outs and fade ins, and how much time you spend on the same full page panels. So I used the iPhone, I think it was an iPhone 10 by that time or something, I can't remember, iPhone 11 or something. So I used the screen size of that, use the S22, use different screen sizes just to make sure that
we try it on multiple phones.
There's nobody who read that and not get the same effects on different phones or platforms. Then use the iPad to, and all that. Yeah. And Mura even built a platform to test.
Yeah. Because of my programming experience, I built a reader. So it's even the link to that reader we sent to Tom Revolts just to make sure that it's no matter the phone you're using, you have similar experiences.
Same experience. Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive, and it worked. I'm serious. It was those stories that you did, those episodes, were fantastic, and I have to say the Warbringer armor that you put in there, that's one of my favorite modern designs for Iron Man. I truly love
Wow.
it. I actually
Thank
like I
you.
said, one of the things that I do for Nerd Initiative is the Hall of Armor shorts, and the Warbringer
We saw
was.
the video.
Did you see?
Yeah, we saw the video.
I couldn't help it. It was so cool. As soon as I read it, I was just like, oh, I gotta do one about that. I wanted the hard thing about those shorts is they're only allowed to be a minute long, and I wanted to go so much longer, but it's that's it. Yeah. So I absolutely loved it. I thought the concept was incredible, and the design was so cool with the 3 unit. Oh, all about it. It was excellent.
Yeah,
So
That's Muriwa, by the way.
that's what I was about to say too. Like I really when I saw his designs, I was like, what? This looks incredible. Like I think it was after I saw his designs that I now added the line of a kaiju's worst nightmare. Because when I saw that, I'm like, yes. Well, while I was coming up with the idea, was mostly playing around with the 3 armors, the Iron Trinity armors joining together to form one armor, and the fact that you have 3 arc reactors in one suit. So, but Dotun's design now brought it to life that I had to adjust some of my writings for it. It was very, very good.
Yeah, it was excellent. Well done. I can't applaud you enough on that design. It was incredible. So all right, well we're talking about Iron Man. So now we got to get into I Am Iron Man. I'm so excited for this series to see where it's going to go. I really genuinely love the first issue. So I just wanted to ask you guys again, similar to like New Men and everything that we've talked about, where did the story come from? Is this something that you said that you I believe you said somewhere that you had already kind of had this thought in mind for Iron Man, Marewa? So where did it come from? What was the basis of wanting to tell this story?
Yeah, I during the period where we're working on our own comics, for some weird reason, I love the Iron Man movies. Anytime I read Avengers comics, I always love Iron Man. Is always what I'm looking out for. I loved Bendis' run on Iron Man. I loved International Iron Man, and I was like, okay, just like I got into storytelling, like, okay, I want to write my own pitch for this character. If someone called me today, I had no plan of reaching out to Marvel. I didn't even know how to reach out to Marvel. I was like, if by some ridiculous chance somebody asked me, what Iron Man story do you want to tell? What would it be? And I was already working on something I wanted to call The Untold Tales of Iron Man, where I walked through the history of Iron Man to tell stories that were never told. And I wanted those stories to be deeply emotional stories. They were action packed, but they were emotional stories. Iron Man's encounter with different people, from civilians to other superheroes. So I always had that pitch. So after we worked on Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood for Tom Brevoort, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Okay. And I sent the pitch to Dotun. We went through it, we tweaked it a little, and we just sent it to Tom Brevoort's like unprovoked. He didn't ask for anything. We're like, here, and just cover our eyes. And we kept having a conversation. He didn't acknowledge the pitch. So like, wait. Is he pretending not to have seen it, or what's going on here? So we now asked him about the pitch again that we sent him. He was like, oh yeah, he didn't see it. So he scrolled by and said, okay, he's going to go through it. And then he went through and said he loved it, that he's going to see what he can do about putting it in the next Iron Man slate, that this would be a perfect series for his 60-year anniversary, which was coming up soon. So like, wow, like we pitched it at the exact right time, because we had even forgotten that Iron Man was going to be 60 soon. So it was its own thing. So, and the reason why the title changed from Untold Tales of Iron Man to I Am Iron Man, because the first script I wrote, I made Iron Man say that line, like, I am Iron Man. And I think that was the title of that episode too. And it was like, a lot of comics that have Untold Tales in them usually don't do so well commercially. And you already have this killer line in your story. Why don't you make this the title of the entire series? And we jumped on it, but we still kept to the core of the story. There are still stories that are deeply emotional and deeply physically challenging stories of Iron Man that he would rather you don't know about those stories. There are still his untold stories. That was the pitch for the story. So, and I am Iron Man 1. It's very, very lovely. It's very nice. But as you move ahead with all those other stories, you're going to see why they are untold stories. It's going to start getting more challenging, more emotionally challenging, more physically challenging. And you start seeing both the heroic parts of Iron Man and the not so heroic parts that we still love of Iron Man. And we walk through Iron Man during the Archie Goodwin era. We go through to the 90s where Joe Quesada was working on him and Kurt Busiek. And then we move on to during the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of Iron Man fans, many liked it, some didn't like that particular era where Iron Man felt like he was betraying his friends. So how did it feel to be Iron Man then? How to be the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. then? So and then we move to the present day Iron Man stories now. How would we craft them now? And so that's how we move through the entire series. And by the fifth issue, I think it's going to be a very memorable series for Iron Man fans.
I have no doubt about that. It's like I said, the first issue already, I don't know that I love the idea that you're telling me it's going to get more emotional than the end of the first issue there, because I'm an easy cry and that got me the wedding ring. Whose idea was the ring? I want to hear about that.
That's
Was that you? Were you the one that did that to me?
I'm sorry.
It's all right. It was a beautiful moment. It was excellent. Also, I wanted to ask you to talk about the we were just talking about the Infinity Comics, the panel work in this. Did you do all the layouts for the panel work, or was that something you two worked on together?
It's all Dotson.
All the time.
Come on, no, that's not true. That's not completely true. We work together.
Well, I understand. I was just curious because I was the panel work in that of how it clearly denoted what time frame we were in with that specific like part of the story. Every time you turned a page, you knew exactly what where you were in Iron Man's history of this story being told. And it was really incredibly well done. And I just wanted to ask about, how you came up with the idea of showing it, three eras on one page and telling the story so quickly, but so precisely and like succinctly. I'm not kidding. I'm going to gush over this book the entire time that we're on here. It was excellent. So anyway, I was curious how you came up with the idea to do the panel layout the way that it was, because it was so well done.
Do you want to take that
for me right
here? Okay. You would answer after this. So, when we're writing I Am Iron Man, funny enough, we didn't start with issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
We started with the 5th issue. So I started from the ending and worked my way to the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been telling stories about set in different eras of Iron Man. And when I got to issue 1, I was like, if I just told the story of Iron Man in his Model 1 armor, some readers might think this is the only era we're going to focus on in Iron Man. I was like, okay, issue 1 has to focus on multiple eras of Iron Man, and so that they can know that this series is going to do exactly that as well moving forward. Because since they're episodic and not serialized, you might just think it's a one-shot as well. Mm-hmm. So, but okay, so issue 1 has to focus on multiple eras of Iron Man. And when the Amazing Spider-Man, the reboot with Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr., there was a page that was going viral at that moment, just a single page where they show like what did Peter do, and I wanted a page that summarized the entire series. I wanted a page that summarized the entire issue. And so I was like, okay, I need Iron Man in the past, I need the present, I need the future. And I remembered while doing research for the book on Tales of Suspense, issue 39, the first appearance of Iron Man, there was a line there by, even though Stanley didn't write the story, he occasionally puts like these narrative things there. And there was this line there about Iron Man was destined to be the most tragic figure on earth. And I really wanted to blow that out. So that was what inspired that page, trying to show different eras and how everything still, that little story in Untold Tales of Teta, that we're just, every Iron Man comic after that is just trying to tell that same story, that Iron Man was destined to be the most tragic figure on earth, and try to summarize that in one page. And then Dotun now made it more visually cohesive by using match cuts and trying to dark reflections and things. So he brought that idea to life.
Yeah, the tragic figure that you brought up, Maria, that's what I wanted to touch on. I always thought that was such an interesting thing that Stan Lee put at the beginning of, or at the beginning or wherever it was in that story.
Yeah.
Because I've read all of those issues of Tales of Suspense. I've read all of Iron Man, and he never seemed like this overly tragic figure like he had intended him to be. Whereas in I Am Iron Man #1, you get to see him truly be a tragic figure by the end of that story.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so I took that line, like instead of describing how Tony Stark became Iron Man, I took that line as a prophecy that this is where he's going to, because that line really stood out. So yeah, that's how I picked that line and then repurposed it for this book. And another line in the Tales of Suspense that I really liked was, yeah, all those hype in the beginning of the book, like, you know, when you say who, you know, and they were talking about as the lumbers closer and closer, you know, the invincible Iron Man and all those stuff. So those were lines were also put at the end of the book where Tammy was also saying those things to Iron Man. So we really loved a lot of things in that first appearance of Iron Man that we had to put as many stuff as possible in that one issue.
Yeah, and
it made a lot of sense because Sammy was a true fan, though crazy.
Yeah,
fan from the future.
Was a fan. Yeah.
I was going to bring up. You mentioned the Mark 1, you know, the gray armor, the gray suit. The first time that we interact with the villain in this first issue is one of my favorite moments in the Mark 1 armor, showing exactly how powerful that armor is, where you had this giant monster coming at him and he doesn't move. He stands still and it breaks the leg off. It just chef's kiss perfection.
Yeah,
Muru and I have these conversations about how truly powerful superheroes are, some of them, and sometimes how we forget. One time, I think this was during the Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood, we're talking about Spider-Man, and sometimes we forget how truly powerful that guy is.
We forget that he has super strength. We remember his agility, but we forget his super strength.
Yeah, but when you hear Spider-Man, your mind just goes straight to agility, speed, flexibility, and all that. But you never really think strength. So we talked about let's show that strength in this work. Let's really show that strength, spidey strength and everything. So yeah, we were able to do that. So we had that same conversation about this Mark 1 suit or armor, you know, and then we wanted to portray that. Yeah, even growing up, whenever I saw that suit, I didn't really feel the sense of strength. It just felt like this scrappy machination or whatever contraption. Like, what is all this? It's not colorful. It's not nice. Can't do much. But when I read Tales of Suspense and some other things I could find, and I saw that, oh wait, this guy is actually smart enough to think about capacity and strength and all that. Oh, nice, and we should do that here too.
The armor was running through steel walls, concrete, digging under the ground. They're like, oh, like because it's the first armor, we instinctively assume it was very weak. But no, Iron Man started strong. His early armors, if you read some of this classical, his early armors had fights with the Hulk. Yeah. Some he won, some he didn't win. But for it to have at least tried to go against the Hulk, you should know how powerful those early armors were. So
that's what a smart guy. So he's definitely going to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wanted to show that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you did, because it is something that a lot of people, especially people that have come to the character from the MCU, because that Mark I armor, they treated it the way that most people think of it. It's just the clunky suit that got him out of the captivity. Whereas if you do go back, like you guys mentioned, if you do go back and read those Tales of Suspense issues, even when he brought it home and just essentially painted it gold because it was ugly, it was going up. Like, that was the original suit in the Avengers. That is the powerful suit that he created. It wasn't just a thing built from scraps like it was in the MCU. As much as I love the MCU and the look and everything they did with the Mark I, and Mariwa, you made a good point where, as modern readers, we have a tendency to look at anything that was created before that isn't the newest thing as being less than. And that's one thing that I really loved about this first issue, that you didn't make it feel less than. You made it feel like this is still Iron Man, whether he's in the sleekest, gold and red, or if it's just the old clunky suit. So kudos again. It was excellent. I really, that early on got me so excited about this series. And again, I'm going to keep saying it until you blush. The artwork is phenomenal. Just incredible.
Thank you.
Especially how much I know that you guys had. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna keep gushing about that. I wanted to ask about your process on how you come about preparing a story. I asked you about panel layouts and things like that, but how do you guys, because you work so well together, how do you come about getting a story together and working through it? Like, what's just a basic idea of like your process of how you get a story and go from idea to here's what we're going to do?
Finished product. It's easier because we're a duo, and we take the work from, like, we do basically everything on the project except the lettering. Even the credits page is drawn by Dotun. He colors it, everything. Even sometimes does mock lettering, like just a rough lettering, so that we can know how the eventual book will look like and everything. So it's easier for us to be able to have like almost complete control of how the book will look at the very end. But I think the reason why there's this cohesion is because from the idea phase, I'm always talking with Dotun. We're always on the phone call, on video calls and everything. Like, okay, what do you think about this idea? And then he says, why don't you try like this? When I write the pitch for Tom Brevoort, I send it to Dotun first, and he greenlights it first before I send it to Tom Brevoort to review, which is crazy. So when I'm done with my script, I send to Dotun first to review it before we send it to Tom Brevoort. So that back and forth. And when Dotun also draws any page, any panel, he sends it to me first before we send it to Tom Brevoort. So sometimes we make adjustments. Sometimes Tom Brevoort even greenlights a page, and Dotun and I still goes back like, wait, I think we should change this. Let's change this. Let's adjust this. So it's the I would say it's also how I write, and it's also how we work. It's iterative. So we keep going back to it over and over again and going forward, going back, going forward. And yeah, so it's the iterative method. So yeah, that's our work. We keep touching up on every stage together from the beginning to the very end.
So my turn, yeah?
Yeah.
So let me remind you about the root about or the root of collaborative synergy. I like to think about the times when we worked together in school, yeah, when you did the back end designs and I did the front end. So luckily for us, we did the same, program, computer science. So I kind of understood what he wanted me to do, even though I wasn't as good as he was, writing the codes and everything. So when Mura says, I want this page to lead to this page, we can keep this effect and we can do this, and I don't want too many things, down here, blah, 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 and all that. I can see the reasoning behind that. I can see, the objective and everything. And if I don't agree, I would also, tell him what I think should happen. And because we're coming from the same background, we can actually, agree and shift things around and compromise and all that. So I think we've worked together before long enough to kind of have this fine-tuned pattern or whatever you want to call it now. So yeah, I remember one time while I was working on Photoshop in class, Mura comes up to meet me and says, "You're going to be a very good programmer." And I was like, "What?" Slow down. So I think I know what he saw. He saw how I guess, I'm not sure, maybe he saw how my layers were arranged and how I was handling the coloring phase. I think I was coloring Puss in Boots.
Yeah. Out
So,
of two colors, it does it in so many layers.
Like, so many layers.
Like when you're painting a cat, you probably just draw the outline and draw the ears. But the two might probably still color the skin on that. And you're like, nobody's going to see the skin. Just put the ears on it.
The skin adds texture.
Yeah. So
the cat may have a bald spot or something, So anyway, so coming to this phase in our life where he's writing and I'm going through the script and everything. So when I want to approach a page, I first of all want to approach a panel and I like to look at the whole page, holistically and everything. So what's this guy saying on this page? I ask myself. And sometimes I tell him I read his script in 2 ways. I read his script at least 3 times. I skim through like 100 times, of course, but I read properly at 3 times at least. But I read it as 2 people, the guy who knows the writer and a reader who doesn't know anything about this. And then I come with the, changes and notes and everything and what I think, And then when I'm approaching the page, I'm like, okay, what's this writer saying? What is my friend saying? Okay, I don't know this guy. I'm just an artist. What do I think this person is saying? If I don't see this cohesive understanding, I think there might be a problem. I think I understand what you're saying because I'm your friend. So I tell him, yo, I think we need to revisit this. I know what you're saying because I know you. We've been friends for so long. I don't think if I didn't know you, I would get this, and things like that. So, oh yeah, that's true. The stories in our heads and everything, and then we fine tune and everything. And then I do this sketch. I don't like sending sketches out because I know I'm very embarrassed about those sketches sometimes. But Mura says, no, it's fine. Let's send it to Tom like that. It's fine. I'm like, no, I don't want anybody to see this nonsense. And then he will say things like, dude, I've seen insert a popular artist name, send what sketches out on Twitter and everything. Those guys are big boys and everything. I'm not that, they have the confidence and everything. But really, that aside, so I sent it to him and he's like, okay, nice, fantastic, and everything. And, so I go through that phase as the artist who doesn't know the writer and the artist who knows the writer. And I try to find that synergy in the understanding. And I send it to him and he's okay, vets it and says, okay, it's fine. Can we move this around? Can we, like you said, the iterative steps that we take. So then we send it to Tom. Then coloring is another thing. The mood, because I like to play with colors a lot. Some of our favorite colorists are Dave Stewart,
Matt
What's
Wilson
that, like Matt Wilson?
and
Thanks. Yeah,
and Mate Gracia.
Magic Grass. Yeah, Magic Grass is crazy. So yeah, so I like to try to channel all those things that I really like about them. I like to play with colors a lot. And then we're talking about the mood. What is the writer saying on this page? What mood are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to evoke in a reader here? So we go through all those things. I believe many other artists do. So yeah, so we have a lot of back and forth. And sometimes I worry. Jem Batel, thank you, Fiona Staples. Thank you for reminding me. Jem Batel, my God. So yeah, Fiona Staples. Yeah, so we try to do some of those things, and we have this back and forth so much that we think that our partners will be jealous about the amount of time we talk a day. I mean, we're already seeing that. So, so yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of back and forth and everything until we feel like, yeah, I think this can go out now. Yeah. So nothing is really set in stone until we have this struggle and pushing things around. Okay. It's cool.
Yeah, and he has so much input in the story, while I also still have so much input in the artwork as well.
Yeah. Muro has a lot of respect for artists, and I have a lot of respect for writers. In fact, yeah. I started out as a writer because I wrote a lot of comics in high school, and actually secondary school here, I guess. And I wrote a lot of comics in class, making fun of teachers and everything, making fun of people, drawing stupid things, silly things. Then Zeta Project came out. So I did my Zeta Project kind of thing to my robots who went rogue and everything. So, and I see how difficult it is to create a world, not to talk of a universe and all that, where you have interconnected stories and everything. So I have this deep respect for writers and everything. Amura loves artists and, so he has a lot of input in what I do. I have a lot of input in what he does and respect for what he does and what writers do generally. These people are creating worlds out of their heads. I can understand that. It's really amazing to work with great people like
and the occasional time where we do have conflict is because of that respect. So, for example, I sometimes write a script that I'm like, I just want the art to tell the story. And then she's like, no, you have to put narration there. I want so many texts to come out.
I want the writer to tell the story.
Like, you hear the typical argument of, a writer, an artist is offended that there's so many dialogue covering up my artwork.
I don't care.
I want more. I want you to say more. Cover up this artwork. Like,
and then he's like, it's a visual medium. It's a visual medium. Like, yeah, I know, but I want to read.
Like he gave an analogy recently that kind of touched me. Say that when you have a friend that is extremely smart and intelligent, but when he gets drunk, says stupid things. But the only time your wife meets him is when he's drunk. So your wife thinks your friend is a dumbass. So it's like it pains you so much that your friend is so smart, but this important person thinks this person is very important, thinks the person is dumb. So he says, like, I know you're thinking about so many things. I've seen your scripts. Your scripts are endless descriptions about things, but things that the audience would never know you thought about.
Never see. Like never see the light of day. Dude, Mura's script comes with panel descriptions that are thick with images and everything. And I'm like, whoa. Then I see the narration, it's just empty. I'm like, what? You want me to do all that? I mean, I want to do all that, but I need you to say some of these things in the panel description. Let people see these things. Let them read these things, Yeah. But anyway, it's cool. I like it too.
Yeah, like in I Am Iron Man 1, there's a little subtle thing that a lot of people got, but I think some people missed. But because we didn't say it explicitly, the fact that in every era of Iron Man always puts the civilians first before the battle. Like when it was coming from the ground, he had to make sure the civilians were away, like run, before he started fighting the Tammy and the distant and the giant creatures. And in present day, he had multiple armors. He could have used all those multiple armors to face the threats, but he made sure those multiple armors made sure everybody else was safe. Grannies to their farms, people in their businesses. That was what he was using the armors to do rather than to face the threats. If he used those armors to face the threats, he would have won. But there are subtle things that you would have to notice yourself where it's not said in any narration. There's no narration, there's no dialogue that says, I want to make sure the people are safe first before I fight. So just little things like, but Dotun was insisting, like, just put it down, like, no, let people see it in the artwork. So yeah.
I was saying that I think that your collaborative relationship is clearly working very, very well. I'm going to let you guys go here in just a moment. I just wanted to ask one last question. If you were able to write or draw one character that you haven't yet, who would it be? Any character that has already been created, because you guys do great work with your original, and obviously you're phenomenal with Iron Man and Ironheart, all of the people that you've done already. So do you have one character that is the character that, all right, if I got a chance to write for them, I'd be fulfilled?
For me, it's always been Iron. For me, it's always been Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, getting to write the Iron Man series, I've finished up with the script. I felt so fulfilled. Like I was almost like, yeah, now I can die happy and things like that. But any other character, there's so many. That's the thing. It's not just one. I think there's Beta Reveal. In DC, you have Wonder Woman. Yeah, I would say Wonder Woman is probably that character, but there are multiple characters. There's Thor.
It's actually a very difficult question for us.
It's a very difficult question. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
it was not a nice question.
Yeah, but if I'm to pick one, especially not in Marvel, especially not in Marvel, probably be Wonder Woman.
And in Marvel? What about Marvel?
How about Marvel? I just want to write all of them.
All of them. Interesting. We both like women with swords. So, and we've had this conversation before about who we really want to tell a story about. We've mentioned Sif, Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
We also like Big Bada. And,
Big Bada, yeah.
Yeah. So we like women with swords. But if I'm just left with one character, it will be Peter Parker, definitely.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
You could see his love for Spider-Man in his Moon Knight, how Spider-Man moved, the web, everything. It's just so clean. He almost stole the show from Moon Knight in his own book.
Right.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me. Mariwa, Dotun, thank you. We're really looking forward to everything that you guys do in the future. Can't wait to read the rest of I Am Iron Man, and just excited for your all's bright future. So again, thank you.
Thank you for having us. It was a real pleasure. It was fun.